Hello everybody, today we're going to be talking about Android Kotlin variables, and what I mean is Kotlin variables, but I do a lot of Android development, so I'll be showing you these programs running on Android. Now the first thing you're going to need to know is that the previous video explained exactly how to get this example project going. We basically have uh, one activity and a text view, and we also have a main activity.kt file. So the main activity KT file is located under app java, the package name, and then main activity.kt, and the layout file is located in the layouts folder of the resource folder. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is what is a variable, and basically it allows you to store a reference to an object. And since I haven't really gone in depth of what an object is, basically it allows you to store some stuff. So the very first example of a variable, the simplest example of a variable, is going to be just saying val some variable. I'll just call it sum, and we put the equal sign and the value. So here this variable stores an int type, which is just going to be able to store some number, which brings us to variable types. Another variable type is some string, and that string is going to be equal to some letters, ASDF in this case. So a string type can store any string of letters. That's anything from an empty string to one letter, two letters, n letters, spaces, whatever you want to put in parentheses, that's going to be a string. And some int will just give it an integer. So this one can actually store 0, 1, 2, up to some really big number. And yeah, the thing about Kotlin is that it is what's known as a statically typed language, which means that the types cannot change. So if I, in some later code, decide to reassign the value of some int, then it won't actually let me assign it to something like a string because it's already an int type. The other thing too is Kotlin differentiates between val and var. So a var is something that can change over time, and a val is something that stays constant. It cannot be reassigned later. So if I have some int as a val, then when I try to change it to a different number, it's going to give me an error, and it's going to say, oh, val cannot be reassigned. But if I do the same thing as a var, it allows me to, and it doesn't give me an error. Now we're going to get into some other things about vals and vars, such as modifying. Well, this is modifying, but we can also modify it relative to some previous values. So if some int starts at 1 and I want to make it to 2, I can just simply give it a 2. But if some int could store any number and I want to have that number increased by 1, I can say, well, some int is equal to some int plus 1. And now that's going to go ahead and give me a 2. It also tells me that it's replaceable because there's a shorthand notation for this, and the shorthand notation for this is to replace with a plus equals 1. So we put the plus sign, we put equals sign, and 1, and that increments it. And there's even another way that we could increment it by 1. We can just say sumint plus plus. And that will go ahead and increment it and reassign it the new number. So let's see what this means in the context of Android. What we can do is we can take any variable we want, and we're just going to work with this first one, some string. We're going to change the text to hello variables. And then we're going to go ahead and grab our text view and store it in a variable. So our text view, here in our layout file, we can see that the text view has no ID. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to have to give it an ID so that we can reference it from our code. So we're just going to call it TextView as the ID. And then whenever we go to our main activity, we're going to assign our text view to a variable by calling it TextView equals to find view by ID, and then we're going to tell it that this view that comes back is a text view, and we'll get more into this sort of stuff later, but the basic gist of it is that we're going to type in the ID here, r.id.textView. And remember that Android and Java and Kotlin are case sensitive, so you do have to type it in the exact same case as in the layout file. So we typed it in here with a lowercase t and an uppercase v, and we have to type it in here the same way. Now once we have our text view, we can go ahead and say TextView.text is equal to some string. And then when we run our code here on our virtual device, then we're going to actually, what's going to happen here is it's going to take this main activity.xml with this text here that says hello variable, and hello variables with an exclamation point, and it's going to do it without an exclamation point because that's what we typed in here. We also typed it in here lowercase where previously it was uppercase. So it's building now. Now it ran, and we can see that the text did change to hello variables without an exclamation point and all lowercase. And that's it for this video. I hope that was enough to give you a short introduction to variables, and we'll get into more details in a later video. Have a good day. Don't forget to like and subscribe.